and welcome to the Week 4 edition of the Lines Mega Pod. It is Matt Brown. It is Adam Candee. It is Steven Andress, and we are coming to you with a decent little week, I think. Maybe some more plays in my account that I like than the last couple of weeks. Interesting Thursday night football game, boys. We are always looking forward, but I do think that there's something to look back on with this one very, very quickly, because it was a division that was kind of up in flux in the offseason. You had everybody trying to make a case for everybody in that division, and there was a lot of talk, Adam, about the Packers and, hey, this is the team, this is the number, this is the bet, this is whatever it is. And now you see, like, Jordan Love, more bad than good so far this season. Offensive line, Bakhtiari goes to IR now. He's gone for the season. I think there's a lot to dislike, I think, about this Packers squad. And so now the question is it Lions or no one? Or do we honestly think that the Vikings, given their ridiculously horrible luck, can play their way back into this thing?
I'm going to tell you, Matt, I'm not out on the Packers yet. I didn't love what I saw in the way they got pushed around last night, but I'm also looking at a team that was dealing with a cluster injury on a short week, and yet, despite the fact that they got shoved around for a full half, we're a 2-point conversion away from really being back in that game against a team that everyone is now racing to praise in the Detroit Lions. So my answer with the division is that the Lions are clearly in the driver's seat at this point. I believe that there is a path for the Packers back into this thing, but it is clearly as the number 2. That Vikings defense for me is just not going to hold up enough for them to be able to get back into it.
Steven, I think if you look at what we've seen from the Lions so far, obviously David Montgomery looks ridiculously good. You have a Jared Goff that, he got picked, whatever, but he's been pretty good since the beginning of last season for this squad. And I think people forget, and you and I were on the side texting about this back and forth, but I think people might even forget, kind of out of sight, out of mind deal, that they're gonna get Jameson Williams back in 3 weeks. And so, like, if you like what you see now from this offense, now you get back one of the more explosive receivers from the draft a couple of years ago. I mean, I wanted to pump the brakes on the Lions. I was the one who was preaching, hey, what are we doing here? It's still Jared Goff and this defense, et cetera, et cetera. But I might be eating my words. I think that the offense is going to be good enough to outscore some teams in a lot of games. And I think the defense is like just good enough to where they're going to maybe win some games that are pretty close. I don't know. I might be eating my words on the Lions.
Sure, but don't rule out the Bears yet in the NFC North.
Yes, that's exactly. I'm sure your thoughts coming out of that game last night, but pretty interesting. Of course, we'll talk some more futures and stuff as we get a little bit further along here in the season, because those odds are going to get pretty interesting. But we'll go ahead and hop here into week number 4. Atlanta Falcons and the Jacksonville Jaguars are PSA to you. This is over in London, so you got to get up early, 9:30 Eastern, 6:30 Pacific, if you want to play this one in the morning on Sunday. 3 right now across the board on the Jags. This opened 4.5. That got bought quickly. They took the 4, they took the 3.5, and now we have landed on 3 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. 43 is the prevailing total. Steven, we've seen a Jags team that was in it with the Chiefs. Then we see a Jags team that goes out and loses to the Texans, and not only loses, but gets pushed around. And then you have the Falcons, where I don't know if we exactly have any idea what the Falcons are.
Before I get to the handicap, just curious, be it an Eastern time zone guy, do you Pacific time zoners wake up for the London game before dawn? Are you the diehards?
I will this one because I have a bet on it. So I have a bet on this. If there's no bet, it's like catch the second half. I don't know about you, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, my responsibilities on Sundays mean that I'm up usually by about 6:30 in the morning regardless, because I got to get ready for the show that I do on Sundays. So, yes, I will be there. All
right. Well, some tea and crumpets perhaps before dawn for you guys. And, for this game, with it now at 3, Matt, I need 2.5 still for Jacksonville. I have to come off my priors on Jacksonville at this point. Doug Peterson is making it abundantly clear that he did not take over play calling in the second half of that game. He called those reports false. So whether you believe him or not, it seems like he's not ready to just abandon ship on Press Taylor as the play caller. And let's not forget that Press Taylor was a sticking point on his way out of Philadelphia as well. He wanted Taylor to be his offensive coordinator in Philadelphia. GM Howie Roseman did not. And that was one of the list of reasons why he got fired on his way out of Philadelphia. So jury's still out for me as long as Press Taylor is the play caller in Jacksonville. I just don't get it. I think we've seen enough at this point, but Doug's sticking with him at least for this week. Overall, I do think this is a good matchup on paper, at least for the Jaguars defense. We know that their deficiencies are in the passing game and on the back end, but they're facing Desmond Ridder, who is basically a zero at quarterback at this point. And again, at least on paper, they have one of the top 5 defenses in rush D by EPA, success rate, and DVOA. Small sample size, but at least encouraging when you're facing an offense that literally can only run the ball, it seems. So, but I'm still nervous to back this offense when they're stuck in mud, it seems, at this point. Last week should have been the get-right game against Houston, and they had one of the most undisciplined games of football I've seen in some time. So to go back and bet them in London to win the bet, they have to win by more than 3 points. I know you get push equity at 3, but to win the bet, it's got to be more than 3 points. I'm not ready to make that leap on Jacksonville. If it were to get to 2.5 on Sunday, I would probably pull the trigger. But as we record here Friday afternoon, we're not there.
Adam, we have a Jags team that burned a whole lot of people last week, be it in their pick'em contest, be it in their survivor contest, be it whatever it may be. People were quick to snatch up those 4.5s and 4s and 3.5s when it came to the Falcons. We've settled in at 3. It's kind of sat here for the good majority of the last 24 hours. So I think this is about where we're going to be in all of this. How do you see this one going down early on Sunday morning?
I'm not sure there's a side I feel more strongly about this week than Jacksonville. I will lay that 3 with Jacksonville. I think that's the right spot for them. There's so much that lines up to this is the buy point on Jacksonville for me, because as Matt just said, everyone's out on them after that performance against Houston last week. And I get it. And I get all the problems that are there. And I was the one last week who said, hey, I'm worried about the offensive line here, right? Like that there are problems here that might not get fixed till Cam Robinson gets back after this week. But I'm going to point to a couple of things here that make me comfortable in this particular matchup against Atlanta. One of them is real simple. Filter out the guys who've had only a couple of snaps this year. And if you go quarterback versus quarterback, Trevor Lawrence is PFF's number 2 graded quarterback. Desmond Ridder is PFF's number 40 graded quarterback. He has been measurably worse than Zach Wilson thus far this year. Now, take the fact that the Jacksonville Jaguars, by success rate versus the run, are a top 5 defense in the league, and we know that's exactly what Atlanta has to be able to do in order to succeed. And the other defenses that are in that category, I want to just be clear on who it is that we're praising, right? Cleveland, who we all talk about as an all-world defense. New Orleans, who has been a sneaky, very good defense. And then you're talking about the New England Patriots and the Washington Commanders, again, front 7 at least with the Commanders that we respect a whole lot, and New England defense that has been one of the better units in the league thus far this year. You also take the fact that you're taking a essentially rookie quarterback in Desmond Ridder, putting him in this international game for the first time. There are a lot of variables here that, to me, point to this being a spot where we see Jacksonville be able to bounce back. I'm not saying they go out and win this game 27-10 or anything crazy like that, but I do see this as a spot where you get enough out of Trevor Lawrence to be able to support a defense that takes away what Atlanta wants to do.
Yeah, when it got to 3, I pulled the trigger on Jacksonville as well. As you mentioned, I mean, Trevor Lawrence kind of under the radar has been pretty good. He's, as you mentioned, second to only Tua. He's actually second in big-time throws as well. If you look, he's been very, very unlucky. His receivers lead the league in drop balls through 3 weeks as well. 9 different drops for this team. And if you guys remember, a couple of those have been of the variety where they hit the guy here, it bounces up in the air, and it has turned into picks as well, right? They've just been incredibly, incredibly unlucky with all of that. Now, they got to get better in the red zone. That is really where they have struggled so far. But, I mean, listen, this Chiefs defense might be elite. And so them struggling as much as they did in the red zone against the Chiefs defense, I don't know if that's a big downgrade for me, on this Jags team. So yeah, the pass rush has not been all of that, hasn't been all that great. But as you mentioned, Steven, I mean, listen, they guard against the run as good as anybody, right? 3.1 yards per carry so far to running backs on the season. And Desmond Ridder is still playing quarterback for this Falcons team. And if you actually up that sample that you were talking about there, Adam, to guys that have actually played meaningful snaps, he's still 33rd out of 34 for the guys that have actually taken like a game's worth of snaps this year over at Pro Football Focus. He leads the league in turnover worthy plays. He's been sacked 12 times already. And I think this is where the Jags, some of this luck just doesn't kind of goes back their way. And they get this done here against this Falcons team that all they want to do is run the ball. They're not going to be able to do it. And so now Desmond Ridder is going to have to actually pass to win. And I don't think Desmond Ridder can pass to win. So I'm with you on that one, Adam. Love this play. It's going to be a contest play for me. It's already in the account from a bet standpoint. And if this did, for whatever reason, get under the 3, I don't think it will. But if it did get under the field goal, I'd come back in and double dip for some more. Actually, that's how confident I am in this one. Pittsburgh Steelers and the Houston Texans. The Steelers are sitting 2.5 to 3 point favorites over the Texans. Texans, get a bunch of hype, right? CJ Stroud has looked pretty good for them, and they were able to, after that win last week. I mean, look, everybody's talking about him and how good he's done and how they were able to pull it off with a kind of a skeleton squad. They had a lot of starters that were out, Adam, and so what we've seen is a lot of Texans love. I mean, this thing coming off the key number, getting down to 2.5, the people love the Texans this week.
So, Matt, you're not going to find me rushing in to lay points on the road with Kenny Pickett and this offense, right? But I do think Houston's offensive love is worth a deeper dive to see how much of it has come in garbage time versus how much of it has been during meaningful snaps. Just pump the brakes a little bit on CJ Stroud. Not a lot, just a little bit on CJ Stroud. And he's going to be facing this week by far the best pass rush that he's seen so far. So I think the question is going to be, can Houston run the ball? And we know that, that offensive line has been beaten up. We know that they have been able to get by despite the fact that they have been beaten up. On the other side of this, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the strangest 2-1 that you could possibly see thus far, right? I mean, you watch them through a couple of weeks and you have no idea how they were able to pull it out against Cleveland with getting a couple of defensive touchdowns, and then just a weird game against what I think might be a bottom 5 bad Raiders team overall. So I'm not really sure how it's gotten to this point with Pittsburgh. I'm going to pass on this thing entirely. If I went anywhere, I would look at under, but that would be probably me being a little bit biased against Kenny Pickett and company, a team that was actually able to put up enough points last week to do its part on the team total side.
Yeah, if we take a look at this, Steven, I mean, what we've got in this Texans squad is what I thought was going to be the complete opposite, basically. I thought they were going to really feature Dameon Pierce. I thought they would kind of ease CJ Stroud into everything, and that has been the complete opposite of what they've done. I mean, they are way up there when it comes to pass rate over expectation. You've got a guy that is sitting here against the Pittsburgh defense as a rookie with limited weapons, who's got a 235.5 passing prop this week. I mean, I think this Texans team, it's just a misread for me because I was going under assumptions, right? Like I was assuming how they were going to go with limited options at wide receiver, with a rookie quarterback, with outside of Tunsil, a questionable offensive line. And that I was just wrong. That's just not been the case. They've cut him loose. They've let him go out there and throw the ball a ton. And honestly, he's made some pretty good decisions and he's looked pretty good. And I think that if I don't have a play in my account, but the passing attempts here at 32.5, I don't think they're going to change. They have really no reason to change. They're not going to become a run heavy team all of a sudden, and certainly probably not against this Steelers team anyway. So my look is more of a prop here on the over passing attempts for Stroud, because I think they're probably just going to keep on doing what they've been doing.
I like that angle. And I will say, as confident as you guys are about the Jags bouncing back from that game against Houston last week and buying low on them, is as confident as I am in selling high on Houston this week, because the cluster injuries at the offensive line didn't hurt them last week, but this is the front that could cause a lot of problems for CJ Stroud. When Houston has the ball, Laramie Tunsil and Josh Jones, a guard and their left tackle, both DMP all week. They're not going to play, on top of 6 other offensive line on IR, as we know at this point. They are outside the top 20 in adjusted sack yards. They're 25th in adjusted line yards. That O-line's doing nothing for them. And now here comes Pittsburgh with the number 2 pressure rate, despite blitzing at a rate outside the top 10. So I think Houston's box score last week was bolstered by, as I mentioned, Jags just being completely undisciplined, frankly, playing like idiots last week. The yards per play was inflated by some blown coverages by Jacksonville, blocked field goal, kick return for a touchdown. Like literally everything that could go wrong for Jacksonville did in that game. Matt, you mentioned the drop passes by Jacksonville as well. So I thought this was quite the overreaction from the look-ahead line, from the reopen at around Pittsburgh -4.5 down to 3. If you're watching on YouTube and a second ago you saw me looking off camera for a while, it's because we have legal betting now here in Kentucky, and there was 2.5 left on Pittsburgh, and I fired on it and I double dipped some more. I bet it Pittsburgh -3. It hit -2.5, and I bet a little bit more on that as well. So I don't understand this line move. I understand certainly the concerns with the Pittsburgh offense, but is the Houston defense the unit to cause issues with that? And I don't think it is. This is a unit that is outside the top 20 in DVOA and EPA defensively. They only have an average pass rush. So at this point, you're getting some push equity if you're betting Houston at 3, but you're getting basically the worst of the number, and you're essentially betting on them to win the game at this point. Like, this isn't a situation where you're backing Houston as a punchy dog to cover a spread. Like, now we're at the point where you're basically having to bet them to win the game almost. So I can't get there with Houston yet, even though, Matt, you and I were among the most bullish on the Texans coming into the year, that they could be kind of a spunky underdog. I just think it's gone a little too far this week.
Yeah, Adam, to put a bow on this one, I actually weirdly am going to probably pay attention to this game and watch this game, because these are two teams that I still need to evaluate, right? Like, I mean, I think that I'm very confused as to what we've seen by the Steelers, and is Pickett actually going to look like an NFL quarterback at some point this season? Then also on the Texans, like, again, I could just be wrong. I thought the Texans would be a bottom 3 team in the NFL this year. I could just be wrong. CJ Stroud could be league average. And if he's league average, if you have league average quarterback play, because there's so much poor quarterback play, if you have league average quarterback play, you're automatically not a bottom 3 team in the NFL. And so I actually weirdly am going to pay attention to this one, because these are two teams that I think I still have a decent amount of evaluation to do.
Do you know who the number 13 receiver in all of football is by PFF grade thus far this year?
Probably Tank
Nico
Dell.
Collins.
Oh, it's Nico
Collins. And it was Tank Dell who stepped up last week. That's the part where I'm interested with Houston, is to say, not just CJ Stroud, maybe these weapons are a little better than we thought they were going to be, much the same as the Rams with Nakua and Atwell, where we didn't expect much out of these secondary pieces. Maybe just maybe we've got guys who can separate enough that CJ Stroud isn't going to have to be worry about that offensive line as much. If they separate early, gives him a lot more of an ability to get the ball to these guys. So I'm with you, Matt. I'm just watching this one, but maybe they are not as bad as we thought.
Yeah, I think there's something to learn in this one, I think, regardless, any way that you kind of go about it. So don't just completely neglect this one, even if you don't have a bet on it. Los Angeles Rams and the Indianapolis Colts. This thing has no real consensus. You can find a 1 in favor of the Rams. You can find a 1 in favor of the Colts. There's a whole bunch of pick'ems out there as well. Totals are sitting anywhere 45.5 to 46. Steven, what we've seen is a Colts team, 2 different versions, right? We got the Anthony Richardson version. We got the Gardner Minshew version. We just got the deal that Anthony Richardson has cleared concussion protocol, so he will be your starter for the Colts this week up against this Ram squad that has looked spunky, right? I mean, they've at times have have looked at least halfway competent, at least on the offensive side of the ball. We get the word out of Indy that they are not going to change the game plan just because Anthony Richardson got the concussion. Do we believe that? We'll see. So that leads us back to what we were looking at heading into the season. What's his rushing prop? What's his anytime touchdown prop? How many what's his over under on carries? Like all these different things, because if they're not going to change the game plan, all those things are probably not priced appropriately, especially with him coming out of concussion.
He's still the goal line back, right? Like this is a Cam Newton situation. So I think moving forward, anything plus money on an Anthony Richardson touchdown is probably a pretty decent wager there. Overall, for the side on this game, I see a bit of a trenches mismatch, which led me to bet the Colts here. And I'd just say get the best of the number. We're, basically hovering around a pick 'em. You can maybe get a 1 point either side here, depending on where you're shopping. But in terms of the trenches, when the Rams have the ball, we're in a situation now where they're down their left tackle. The backup left tackle last week against the Bengals, Zach Thomas, got beat like a drum. So now they're going to kick their guard, Joe Noteboom, out to tackle this week to try and be a little bit better. Problem is he's bottom 5 in pass blocking grade by PFF among players with at least 100 snaps this year as well. And if you go back to last year, he was not a good pass blocker either. Overall, the Rams are 29th along the offensive line in adjusted line yards, 27th in pass block win rate. And you flip to the other side of the line of scrimmage now, the Colts D-line, I was correct in that they did cause issues with a banged up Ravens offensive line last week. And overall, even before that Ravens offensive line was banged up, they still were pretty strong. Top 5 in adjusted sack rate, top 10 in pass rush win rate on the year. I don't like that. Looks like DeForest Buckner is going to miss this week. That's a big deal, but I think they have enough against the weak offensive line here with the Rams. When Indy has the ball, I think they can run it down their throat. I really do. The Rams are bottom 5 in rush D, EPA, and DVOA. This has been a multi-year issue with Sean McVay defenses, even when you have Aaron Donald on the field. The Colts have a number 6 pass block and run block win rate offensive line. And the biggest concern I had with Quentin Nelson missing Wednesday and Thursday at practice, he returned to practice today. So it looks like we have a fully intact offensive line for the Colts. And last note here, rough spot for the Rams. Cross country, back-to-back weeks on a short week off Monday Night Football. So yeah, I like the Colts here to kind of just continue and be on the upswing. And I think Steichen has been a really good play caller so far.
Adam, if the Colts do pull this out, I think this would be a prime opportunity to come in and then take an in-season under on the Colts, because this is a prime spot for them to get a win. And then there are probably not going to be a ton of those moving forward. I think that this Colts squad is going to be feisty and maybe not necessarily actually winning a bunch of games. We're to the point now, Adam Candee. Puka Nacua, his receiving prop, 6.5 receptions and 71.5 yards. Puka Nacua, he to hit the over, he says 7 catches in the game. That is where we are at in 3 weeks with this guy. But I mean, look,
I'm on Ross St. Brown numbers.
Yes, it is. Last night was 6.5. Yeah, for Amon-Ra St. Brown. Last night was 6.5 for Amon-Ra St. Brown. So that is where we are at with Puka Nacua in all of this. What do you see here in Rams and Colts?
Pass for me in terms of side or total. Too much to try to figure out in this game. There are no props up on Anthony Richardson right now other than anytime touchdown. The one I'm seeing at DraftKings is -105, which is probably appropriately priced to be that close to even money number. We got him coming off concussion. We don't know what that means. We've got the Rams in the travel spot that Steven mentioned. I don't love that either. I don't have a lot to get into with this game in particular. I don't really like this game a whole lot from a betting perspective, and so I will skip it.
Yeah, shop around. There's a +110 out there, anytime touchdown for Anthony Richardson. There's a 7-1 on 2+ touchdowns for Anthony Richardson, and I don't think that is out of the range of outcomes.
Not at all
in this game. So if you just want to get a juicy one in there that, again, doesn't have to hit very often for you to be profitable, 7-1 on him to score 2 touchdowns in this game. Minnesota Vikings and the Carolina Panthers. Boys, this is sitting now 4.5 in favor of the Vikings on the road. 46.5 is your total. Adam, we'll kick things off with you. I'll go ahead and let you know I'm in on the Vikings this week. I'll give my reasons in a bit. I'm curious as to your thoughts on this one.
This is the second strongest feeling I have this week is on the Minnesota Vikings. I wish I could have gotten this on Sunday at 2.5. It is now out to 4. And being that it is out to 4, I would feel quite comfortable making this an alt and pushing it out to 6.5, probably 6.5 on Minnesota, because, again, much the same as Jacksonville, I think we've now reached the point where I don't love where the market is valuing Minnesota when let's look at the things that went wrong here for the Vikings. They lose at home by 3 to the Buccaneers in a game in which all the turnovers went against them.
Yeah.
They then
outgained them by 137 yards or something in that game too. Yeah.
Right. And then we see them lose to an Eagles team on a short week in which we knew that the Eagles were going to outclass them. They were never completely out of that game. And also, again, the turnovers went against them. And last week, by any measure, they should have won that game against the Chargers. I mean, if there's any team that can out-Chargers the Chargers, it's the Vikings, and the Vikings managed to out-Chargers the Chargers. And so you see a game in which they added to what is a league-leading turnover differential of -7. Everything has gone against them that went for them last year. This is exactly what happened to make them 11-0 in the opposite last year. And in those games now, they're 0-2. And when you look at this Carolina defense and you see the injuries and how beaten up they are, especially in key areas like having a starting safety out of the game, this to me feels like a game where Minnesota can truly eat. Now, alt up to 6.5. If you don't like the price, if you don't want to deal with the spread, the Minnesota team total right now is 25.5. Guys, against a Chargers defense that is comparable to what we're going to get out of Carolina this week, they put up 24, easily should have put up more than that. This team should be regularly producing 27, 30, 33, 34 points. So I like Minnesota in a lot of different ways this week. A lot of people were talking about the Bryce Young versus Andy Dalton situation and whether that is an upgrade, downgrade, whatever. Well, the market doesn't believe it's much of anything, right? The market doesn't believe that Bryce Young coming back means a whole lot to the Carolina Panthers. Their receivers can't separate. There's a whole lot of things where I look at this Minnesota defense, as bad as it is, and say, I think Carolina might be one of the least equipped teams in the league to take advantage of it.
Yeah, I am actually pretty happy that Bryce Young is back. And listen, I'm actually a Bryce Young believer. I think he's going to be fine in the league, but it does look like this adjustment period's a little bit, by the way, it's just, this is the caveat that I like to bring up, and I'll probably bring it up 3 or 4 more different times. It's like Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert ruined us in our opinions of what rookie quarterbacks should be able to do in their rookie season. And it's like, we just assume everyone's going to step in and look like Hall of Famers. And it's like, that's just not the case with rookie quarterbacks more times than not. Like it's so recent that Burrow and Herbert just destroyed the league as rookies. And we just think that that's the way it's supposed to go. And that is not the way that it's supposed to go. And I think he'll eventually get there, but it's not going to be anytime soon. If you look, Adam, you mentioned it's the 7. Yeah, it's -7 in the turnover differential, but the fact that they've lost 7 fumbles, it's like so absurd, right? It's like, it's not Kirk Cousins throwing picks all over the place. It's literally like fumbles and then they're not falling on the fumbles. Like, it's just incredibly, incredibly unlucky. There's regression and then there's whatever in the hell is happening to the Vikings right now through all this. The offense is good. It's 5th overall by Pro Football Focus. It's 9th in success rate. It's 13th in EPA per play. It's not the offense that's the problem at all. It's the turnovers and where the turnovers are happening, because there are 6 of them are in the red zone. Like that's handing away points like that. Not saying that you're necessarily going to score a touchdown, but you're likely to kick a field goal. So those are just points off the board in the game for this team. And so I don't love the way they play defense. They're blitzed 66% of all downs so far this year, which is the most in the league by 25%. Like, the next closest team is 25% lower.
And how often are they getting home, Matt?
Yeah, 28% pressure rate. That's not good. It's 23rd in the league.
And,
yeah.
And to the point Matt just made about the success rate and EPA on offense, look at the drop back success rate and drop back EPA, and you will see that the Vikings are a top 12 team in drop back EPA outside of garbage time. I should say drop back success rate. The EPA does not follow because they've been hurt so badly by the turnovers, right?
Yeah.
Like that's where you look and see, okay, I can make a case to say this offense really is elite once they get these turnovers, which have been fluky, out.
Yeah, and to your point, Steven, yeah, I mean, they're only getting a 28% pressure rate. That's 23rd in the league, despite blitzing 66% of the time. It's only gotten them 6 sacks on the season as well. So, again, Flores is going to play how Flores plays. He's not going to change it. So it is what it is. You just kind of know what you're getting into whenever you get into a Vikings game. But against Bryce Young, against this offense, all the stuff that Adam said about these look, these receivers just can't, like, they're just not any good, right? They're just not a lot of talent out there. And so the one thing you and I, Steven, when we were doing the previews before the season, we were like, hey, look, the one thing we can at least count on is the Panthers having a good defense. They've actually not been good this year. They've actually been pretty trash. If you look at all the advanced stats, they're bottom 10, 12 in every single one of them. So I just, this is where the Vikings get on the board. This is where they can even afford one of these fluky turnovers and still win the game as opposed to end up finding a way to lose it. Like them a lot. I happen to be on the air on Sundays as these lines are hitting. And so I've been getting a lot of early lines recently. I mean, I got it at 3, but like in context for people coming in today, I would still bet it at 4. Like I would still bet it at 4. So it doesn't matter to me that I have it at 3. If I had no bet, I would still bet it at 4. I just think that the Vikings at this point are exponentially better on the offensive side of the ball than the Panthers. And on the defensive side, it might be a coin toss. It might be a push because this Panthers D has not shown up this year.
And for those that might be interested in getting the best of the number here, because they do move quickly early in the week, our Discord members at TheLines.com did get -2.5 at the start of this week. And go to TheLines.com homepage, top right-hand corner, hit the Discord button, and you can be one of those members that got amazing closing line value on this game. I'm going to be watching this game closely for Bryce Young because with that blitz rate for Minnesota, I want to see if he takes a step and learns here, because with how little pressure they're getting off of that blitz rate, guys are running one-on-one or wide open on the back end of that quite often. Mm-hmm. But Bryce Young is second to only Zach Wilson in how long he's held the ball on each drop back this year. That's not going to work against the blitz rate as high as this week. So let's see if he learns from that. Let's see if he gets the ball out more quickly this week in very beatable situations when that blitz rate is not getting home as much as it is. But yeah, get in that Discord and get the best of the number moving forward, everybody.
Tampa Bay Bucks and the New Orleans Saints. This is 3.5 painted across the board in favor of the Saints. 39.5 to 40 is your total. So we know we are going to be getting Jameis Winston this week for the Saints. And Steven, I don't know if that's a good thing, bad thing, or neutral here for this Saints team. We know Jameis is pretty willy-nilly with the ball sometimes, but hey, maybe that works in the favor of this team that does, at least as of right now, has a healthy Olave, has a healthy Michael Thomas, is getting Alvin Kamara back this week, like all of that. I mean, maybe Jameis's style is a little bit better for what they're going to be rolling out right now. The Bucs came back down to earth last week. We knew this was going to happen with this team. It just was a matter of time. They were kind of smoke and mirrors as it was, but the hook is a big thing. What do you think about the Saints 3.5 at home over the Bucs?
The hook is generally a big thing, that's for sure, but it happens to be the exact point where I don't want to play either side in this game. There's just too many unknowns for me. Jameis Winston, combine that with Alvin Kamara coming back. What is that going to look like? The Bucs do have some injuries on the back end, but do we trust Jameis Winston to win by more than a field goal? Generally speaking, I don't. And then for the Bucs offense, they've looked stuck in mud despite beating the Vikings with turnover luck and beating the Bears with organizational ineptitude. So just facing another strong D in New Orleans after how they looked against the Philadelphia defense doesn't exactly inspire confidence for me. So it's a stay away.
Adam, we have the Bucs that strangely ran the ball just a ton on early downs last week, and then when asked about it this week, said they were going to continue to do that to set up the pass, which I'm like, You guys know there's analytics against that, right? Like that's not how it works. Like that's not what goes on, but they're doubling down on it and say that they're going to continue to do that. That's not going to work against the Saints. And so, I mean, I can't believe I would say more than a field goal with Jameis Winston and the Saints, but like I don't have a play in this game, but if I did, I think I'd probably play the Saints, because if the Bucs are telling the truth and they're just going to go against everything we know to be true in 2023 in the NFL and when it comes to football, then how in the hell could you back them?
So let me run down that injury list that Steven was making reference to, because I think it's important to understand where the problems are here. Carlton Davis is on the injury report, but did practice. Jamel Dean did not practice. You're also looking at Kalijah Cansey and Vita Vea not practicing for this Tampa Bay team. Those are major defensive problems, right? You're talking about your number one run stuffer and one of your top two corners who are DNPs as of one of the key days of the week that we watch these things. So I think the way that I would want to go about this, I don't know what to do with Jameis. Nobody knows what to do with Jameis. He could be 40 touchdown Jameis. He could be 40 interception Jameis. We have no idea. But I do think 17.5 is a very aggressive team total for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers when you look at what the Saints defense has allowed. You can really go back into last year if you want, but this year they have allowed 15, 17, and 18 to the Packers in a game in which the Packers had to go for 2 to get really aggressive and try to come back into the game. And I think you could look at all of those teams and say, I don't know that the Bucs offense is measurably better than any of those teams, right? Don't be fooled by the Bucs against the Bears. Either is a defensive touchdown thrown in to the end of that score. So I would be looking to the under, which right now is actually the less juice side. I'm seeing it at minus 107 on under 17.5 points. That's where I would be on Tampa.
Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles in your teaser special of the week. The Eagles are 8.5-point home favorites over the Commanders. 43.5 is your total. Guys, I said the Commanders were not for real. I said that the Bills were going to go beat up on a bad team. It's exactly what happened. Sam Howell has proven to be either one of two things is going on here, and like we'll figure it out in the next few games. Either he is holding onto the ball exponentially too long, or this offensive line is failing him at every given moment. It's probably a combination of both when it comes down to it, but it's not going to get any easier against the Eagles this week. That is for sure. I am honestly looking towards, well, this number's now gotten bet down. So I actually have an under in my account on 45. There must have been a group release because it was still 45 this morning. So this sitting 43.5 right now. I would still lean under in all of this. Adam, when we look at the way the Eagles play, when they get up, you look at these, like whenever they have a 6-point or more advantage, they play incredibly slow. They run the ball at a 58% clip. Like, I mean, they just protect leads. They do what they do well. They bully you. They beat you up. They kill your soul. They steal your will. I expect them to be up in this game. I expect them to be up a ton. I like the under. I also like the Eagles as a teaser leg.
I make this game Philly 8, so for me, it's pretty much right on where it should be. I can't argue with you taking a teaser leg. I really have a very difficult time seeing Washington winning this game. I have heard some people that I respect advocating for taking 8.5 when it's there with Washington, but it's really very system when it comes to that low total division game. It's not necessarily advocating for the Washington Commanders. I said last week that I was starting to develop an affinity for this Washington team. I'm not going to tell you I'm completely out on them right now because I think we might still have a little too much baked in with Buffalo from week 1 and what we saw against the Jets that is downgrading them to the point where we don't say, hey, this Buffalo team really is elite, right? They might really be the team that we've been waiting for them to be. I'm not 100% sold on that yet. We're going to find out a lot this week. But teaser leg, I absolutely couldn't endorse. I don't have anything on other than that.
Yeah, Steven, it's also we're getting a healthy version of this Eagles team. Like they're at full strength as well, which I think is pretty interesting for them. Now, Washington is going to get Logan Thomas back. I'm just reading that as it comes across the Twitter machine here. So that is at least a bump for this offense if you believe that he can get the ball from Sam Howell. I don't know if you actually believe that that's the case. What say you in this one?
Well, first game of the season, I came on and said that, the sacks that Sam Howell took in week 1 were more on him than the offensive line. Well, now that we have a little bit more of a sample size, it is on the offensive line, because Sam Howell right now is kind of top half in the league in not holding the ball very long. And still he's on pace to take more than 100 sacks at this point. It's brutal. So I don't think Philadelphia's D-line is what's going to cure that. Just to put some numbers on the greater point you were making, Matt, number 2 in pressure rate with the number 27 blitz rate. And if you flip to the other side here, the Philly rush game is still unbelievably elite after what we saw last year. To this point in the season, 52.4% success rate running the ball is number 1 in the league. And it's better than all but 5 teams' passing success rate. That's unbelievable stuff. And the Washington rush D, after being really good statistically last year, has now taken a step back through the first few weeks of the season, more like league average at this point, Matt. So yes, absolutely. Slam dunk teaser leg at this point. I'm with Adam. I'm not completely out on Washington, but kind of like what we saw with the Giants last year and being a little bit punchy against non-top 10 teams. Washington just can't really compete with the elite teams in the NFL, it seems. And we can talk about them in future weeks when they're playing competition that's a little bit closer to their level.
Miami Dolphins and the Buffalo Bills in the, oh my God, I can't believe they left this in the early window game of the week. Like, what in the hell? Dude, move this into a spot where more people can see it. We've got a billion D early games yet again, and then only 3 afternoon games, but so is the way the NFL schedules things. Sitting right now, an expensive 2.5 or a cheap 3 in favor of the Bills at home over the Dolphins. 53.5 is your prevailing total. Steven, I don't have a single bet in my account for this one. I'm going to sit down. This one's going to be the one that's on the main TV. This is going to be the one that's got the sound on. This is the one I'm watching. I'm super, super excited for this game. But the range of outcomes, in my opinion, now there are a lot of people who disagree with me this week. A lot of people are dead set on one side or the other in this, and they think that it's going to go a certain way. I think the range of outcomes is very wide, because anytime there's a strength on strength matchup, I don't really exactly know where to go. I mean, the Miami Dolphins pass offense versus the Bills pass defense is strength on strength. And so who's going to win? Your guess is as good as mine. The Dolphins do get Waddle back this week, so that is something to throw in there. But I can't wait to watch this one. Not going to put it in the account.
I think this game is an opinion game. I don't think there's any particular edge when you're looking at the spread in this one. I think the offense for the Bills is a lot closer to what we've seen the first 2 weeks than what we saw in week 1. I agree with that. But also, I am taking the Buffalo defensive metrics with a big grain of salt at this point, because they face Zach Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Sam Howell. So I don't know if the Bills defense is actually elite at this point, with a defense that is posting the number 1 defensive line in adjusted sack rate and the number 4 pressure rate, despite blitzing at the number 30 rate in the league. So at the same time, I'm not sure this is the matchup that they can take advantage of with those stats, because the Miami offensive line is number 2 in adjusted sack rate, and Tua is getting rid of the ball faster than any quarterback in the NFL at 2.34 seconds per dropback. So that might neutral itself out. For me, I just kind of want to look at this holistically. What did Buffalo do in the offseason to get better this year? And I guess you can argue maybe Josh Allen's healthier from what we saw at the end of last year, but at least in terms of talent on the roster and coaching, I don't see really any big difference in Buffalo versus last year. I think they're a team that's going to beat up on the teams at the bottom of the league and then have to play really competitive games against the top 5 teams in the NFL. And I don't see any reason to come off of my bullishness of Miami at this point when everybody's healthy. So this is another, Discord special. It's not going to help anybody now, but the Discord members and I bet Miami plus 3.5 on the look ahead in this game, because as long as we could get out of that game without injuries, we thought Miami plus 3.5 with what we've seen with their offense was bonkers at this point. And maybe we're wrong, but that's a great number as we stand right now as we get closer to kickoff. So No reason to try and middle the three here with what I think about Buffalo. I think Miami's for real. It's just an opinion. There's no market edge here, in my opinion. So we'll see what happens.
Adam, I wanted to come on here and give a giant opinion on why Devon Achan's number, whatever prop number, was going to be way too high, and that we could come in and play the under on that. They have not posted yet, so they're not up. And so because of that, that take can't be given right now. I will say this. Take a look at what Achan's number is listed at whenever it actually does get posted. After his monster game last week, it might be skewed a little bit too high when it all comes down to it. The Bills have a pretty good run defense, and I imagine that the Dolphins, if they're going to have success, it's probably going to be trying to take advantage of all those skill players through the air. So again, that's kind of maybe the only angle here to try to get in on all of that. But again, nothing posted as we go at it right now. What do you look at in this one?
Well, I have to just give a slight pushback on what Steven put out there in terms of Miami, because they're not healthy. Jalen Phillips has been ruled out of this game. Teron Armstead's going to be a game-time decision. Those are a couple of really important pieces, and I know they were able to get around it in week one with Teron Armstead being out, but I also feel like Buffalo is a team that's going to challenge that a little bit more than what we saw out of the Los Angeles Chargers. Right now, you know that I was the one who came on here in week one and said, I'm really heavy on Miami. I'm trying to talk myself into a little bit of patience with Miami. I could see taking Miami as a teaser leg here and getting 8.5 points, because when we talk about the ability to cover a teaser, you want a team that can chase from behind, right? And there isn't a team in the NFL that is more equipped to chase from behind than this Miami side is, right? I don't necessarily love either side of this spread. I do think that with this thing out to, well, I mean, I don't know what the latest number was. It 54 or back to 53.5?
53.5 is the prevailer.
Yeah. I mean, I've been happier at 54 to think about an under, which I know has been sacrilege to talk about that. But 24-17, Miami versus the New England Patriots. And it's the one good defense that we've seen them play, right? The Chargers are abysmally bad, and the Denver Broncos, I'm pretty sure half of them were on the plane back at halftime from Miami last week. So, I know that everything about what we've seen out of Miami is fantastic, and I'm not going to call this a sell high spot on them, but I cannot advocate for anything more than a teaser when it comes to this game for the Miami Dolphins.
Listen, the other reason I think an under is at least decent, if this thing, specifically the thing, ticks back up, because people come in, they get excited for this game on Sunday morning, and this thing ticks back up, is I'm not convinced that Buffalo doesn't come out and try to run the ball on Miami. Like, they seem very willing to use Cook. Like, he's been really efficient so far. He's been good.
Fine by me. If you want to take the ball out of Josh Allen's hands, by all means, go right ahead.
Well, Matt, to what Steven just says, the other thing that I forgot to mention before, Steven said, what did Buffalo do to get better? Well, they fixed the interior offensive line. Last year, they were the 28th PFF run blocking team. This year, they're middle of the pack so far at 15th. I do think, Matt, that they are more equipped to run the ball if they need to run the ball, and they're not taking the ball out of Josh Allen's hands. They're taking the ball out of Tua's hands.
So two final notes for me, Matt.
Yeah.
Let's see what Vic Fangio brings to this matchup. That's new from last year. I want to see what he brings. Maybe he saved a little bit, disguise a little bit, maybe try and trick Josh Allen a little bit. And let's also not forget that Miami ran in that second meeting in Buffalo last year when they actually were healthy. Raheem Mostert ran for 8 yards per carry against Buffalo as well. So both teams might be able to run the ball really well here.
Yeah, Josh Allen's rushing yards sitting at 35.5 right now. It won't, in my opinion, it won't be for lack of carries. Now, it might be for lack of efficiency, but it won't be for lack of carries. Like, I think he ends up with 8 to 10 carries in this game. And, again, it depends on the efficiency that he has with it or whatever. But I think that's at least an interesting look as well for Josh Allen in this one. But man, guys, I can't wait for this game. Looking forward to it so much. These are two teams legitimately that are going to be there at the end when we're having discussions about everything. Cincinnati Bengals and the Tennessee Titans, 2.5 in favor of Cincinnati on the road. 41 is your total across the board. We are getting injury news as we are sitting here. Traylon Burks ruled out for the Titans in this one. So if you didn't like that, and Joe Burrow gets in 2 full practices in a row for Cincinnati. So still less than a field goal. You would have thought a healthy Burrow minus a Burks would have sent this thing on at least to 3 on the other side of 3, but I don't think, Adam, I think in the grand scheme of things, I don't think people are still convinced that Joe Burrow's healthy. I am not convinced that Joe Burrow's healthy. I think Joe Burrow is just out there kind of gutting through these performances. I don't think we're going to see the true version of Joe Burrow maybe at all this year, but is an 80% Joe Burrow good enough to cover a 2.5-point spread against the Titans, who, as we know, the biggest pass funnel defense in the entire NFL? You could just we could all throw for 180 yards on this. We could do that. What say you?
So last week I had 2 games where I told you guys that I was off market on the game, right? And it was one, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Well, I was wrong on that, and I lost on the teaser. The other game that I was significantly off on was the Cleveland Browns, and I was not at all wrong about that. And who did the Cleveland Browns play last week? So this week, I am again off market, but only on one particular game, and it is again against the Tennessee Titans, and I'm not going to miss it this time. I make this game Cincinnati 5.5. And I know that's probably really aggressive considering what Joe Burrow's situation is, but I think every week that we see Joe Burrow out there, we have an offense with Zach Taylor that has the opportunity to adjust to the fact that Joe Burrow is in the situation that he is in. Now, I'll give you this caveat on it. Joe Mixon is still pounding the ball into the line and not accomplishing a whole lot when he does. So if they insist on doing that against a Tennessee defense that is pretty much inviting you to pass the football, they want you to pass the football, they do not want to allow you to run, then, good on you for betting the Tennessee Titans. Yeah. But I will be laying the 2.5 with Cincinnati. I think this is an overreaction to the Burrow injury. I think it's an overreaction to the Titans beating the Chargers, and I'm perfectly comfortable at less than a field goal with Cincinnati.
And Adam, I think to kind of further the point that you were making, I think we kind of saw it in real time last week, right? Like, I think that they figured out what to do with the passing game in the middle of the game last week, right? Where it was just kind of like, okay, this other stuff we're doing is not working. Let's try and do this, and let's do that. And it worked from that point on. And I think now we come into a game in which they're just going to go with what was working as opposed to trying to square peg round hole the situation with Burrow and the calf and all the different stuff like that. Steven, 2.5 in favor of Cincinnati on the road against the Titans. What say you?
I only heard the tail end of that with a connection issue, but I think we're all aligned here that this line is a little bonkers. That with the original line before the season started at 4.5 for Cincinnati, and what Tennessee has shown us to this point in the season, Joe Burrow's healthy. I know he's banged up, but he got through Monday night healthy, back-to-back full participants. This line shouldn't be less than 3, in my opinion. No other injury concerns for Cincinnati as well. So I don't know why this line is still sitting under 3. I would be still very surprised if it's not at least 3 come kickoff on Sunday. So I don't know what the hell I'm missing here, but I don't get it, man. I mean, I know the Cincinnati offense looks suspect against the Rams. They only crossed the 30 one time in that game. They got out of the game fine, and the Tennessee defense is not very good. And then the Tennessee offensive line, I'm sure you guys already talked about. It's terrible. And I know the Bengals defense has looked average for most of the season, but we saw what they can do against a compromised offensive line and what they did to the Rams offensive line on Monday night. So yeah, I'm with you. This was one of the easiest bets I made this week, Cincinnati -2.
The other thing I think is if you do believe in Cincinnati in this game, I think there's a correlated play that you can make, which is there's a 70.5 rushing prop on Derrick Henry out there. And Derrick Henry's losing a lot of snaps, and if this game gets down, his ass is on the sideline. Like he is not out there to catch passes at all, right? And so if he's losing rushing snaps as it is anyway, and then if this game does get to where they're in a trailing state, then he's not even going to be on the field, much less getting rush attempts in this game. There's a 70.5 where, to me, I think we're not seeing a completely washed running back, but we've been talking about this for the last few years, and I think it's now finally coming to fruition, where he can't just be Superman behind a shoddy offensive line anymore, right? Like it didn't matter before because he was still young and had all the tread on the tires and all that stuff, but like now it just your mortality and age and stuff just finally does catch up with you. And Adam, I just look at this and I see a guy that is going to need a little bit bigger lanes than he needed a couple of years ago. And he's going to need a game state, which favors him a little bit better than he did a couple of years ago. And I don't know if this is the spot or the opportunity.
So I would take what you just said, Matt, and we don't talk a lot about parlays, same game parlays, etc. But if you wanted to try to play that tail, right, you're playing that tail on Derrick Henry under in your game script saying that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win this comfortably. You could push Cincinnati out to 6.5, right? And really really lean into this for a same game parlay where you're saying, okay, Cincinnati to win by more than a touch, by just about a touchdown, and then Derrick Henry under as well.
Baltimore Ravens at the Cleveland Browns. The screen is lighting up like a Christmas tree as we are talking about this one. It is now down to 1 at some books out there. It is a pick'em at one of the books as well. Coming off of this Browns side, 39.5 is your total. I have a Browns -2 ticket. It is going to end up being a bad number because it came out that Deshaun Watson is questionable for this game and has been limited throwing the ball in practice all week because he has a sore right shoulder. Adam, this is not good if your quarterback cannot throw the football forward. So my bet, I don't love at all. I used to love it. I don't love it near as much anymore, which is really unfortunate in everything because this Browns defense, and it still might be good enough, right? But they've just been absolutely incredible so far under Jim Schwartz. Number 1 DVOA, number 2 Pro Football Focus, number 1 EPA per play allowed, number 1 success rate allowed, all of that. So, I mean, there's a ton to love on that side of it, but as we know, the quarterback position is still the most important position in all of sports. And so if your guy can't throw it, that seems to be a problem.
I mean, do you think there's any therapy that they could attempt to do to help him?
I've heard of things, but you know, probably not afforded to him actually. Like
because he's a sexual predator. So
probably not afforded to him actually.
They should.
They're just like rub some tussin on it. Like they're just like he's like, are you sure? I can like just rub icy hot. Just that's you get icy hot. Yeah, that's it.
Couldn't happen to a better human being. So that's obviously going to change any handicap I would have on this. But where I was leaning in the first place would have been under, and that's probably where I would stick if it is hopefully Dorian Thompson-Robinson, because I would actually like to see the local kid get some runs, see what he can do, because he looked great in the preseason. Kid came into UCLA with a whole lot of pedigree and then needed all 5, 6, 7, however many years he was there to be able to kind of get things together. And then he looked pretty good for the Browns before the regular season. So in the end, good news also for Baltimore along the offensive line, where at least some potentially encouraging news on Linderbaum and Stanley for them to get healthy there. Doesn't seem like Gus Edwards is going to have issues with concussion moving forward here. So all that said, I'll probably end up passing on this game overall with the uncertainty on Deshaun Watson, but the only way I would look at it is to say this is one of those divisional slugfest games with a very, very, very good defense and actually a fairly good Ravens defense and a good defensive coordinator as well that could make it something like 17-13 by the time we're done.
Mary Kay Cabot, one of the very best beat writers out there, she is very entrenched with the Browns, says, talk to Deshaun Watson in the locker room. He didn't want to elaborate, but says he's okay and expects to face the Ravens. That's coming through about 40 minutes ago from her. So this is, again, just a beat. We're not saying that's what's going to happen. We're just giving you what is coming through from one of the better beat reporters that is out there. Steven, if we look, I mean, we've talked about these defenses and what they've been able to do, and this Browns team, is absolutely phenomenal so far. They have the single best performances each week so far, in 1, 2, and 3. They're getting the third highest pressure rate in the league, despite only blitzing 16 at the 16th highest rate. And if you want to make a case for them, no matter what's going on with his shoulder with Deshaun Watson, it's the fact that Lamar has been awful against pressure so far this year. Yes, it is a small sample size. We're only 3 games in, but he is 33rd out of 34 qualifying quarterbacks in passer rating when pressured. He is dead last in EPA per play under pressure so far this year. And he is without Odell, and he is without Rashad Bateman in this game as well. So, I mean, I don't know how you get much better at it whenever you don't have 2 of your key weapons to go along with all of that. So maybe the defense will be enough in this game for the Browns.
Possibly. I will also just mention that Baltimore's got a pretty good defense too, and they've been a little banged up on top of it. So despite those injuries, they are top 5 by DVOA defense. They are number 6 by EPA. They've been strong against the run as well. If Cleveland has to go a little more run heavy here with Watson's arm, I bet Baltimore +3 earlier this week, kind of just buying low on them off of what I thought was a fairly unlucky performance against the Indianapolis Colts. And a very low total game, divisional matchup. They know each other really well. So really just taking a key number in a rock fight, to be honest with you. I'm not going to sit here and brag about my CLV because I had no idea Deshaun Watson was going to have this type of issue with his shoulder.
Yeah, nobody did, right? I mean, that just kind of came out of nowhere. That really came out of nowhere. Yeah.
So I'm sitting at a decent number here. But at this point with where the line is, I think I kind of just stay away because you could have some volatility here with how good these 2 defenses are.
Yeah, I will say this on the defensive side of the ball for the Ravens. Ajabo, Owe, Humphrey, all DNPs the last 2 days. That's never any good for them too. Kyle Hamilton was at least upgraded to limited yesterday. So there's that. But yeah, it looks pretty bleak for them. But again, if you're playing a quarterback that can't throw the ball, that really does kind of
certainly not as promising as the Ravens offensive injury report this week.
Yeah, let me tell you, I was really liking that bet, and then it was I don't love it near as much anymore. So we'll see how this all plays out. Again, 90 minutes before game time is when official injury reports have to be in. You'll probably get a leak before then from one of the writers as to what's going to be going on with Deshaun Watson in this game. Denver Broncos, Chicago Bears. We got to talk about it because it's the game that's happening. It's 3.5 in favor of the Broncos on the road over the Bears. 46.5 is your total. Steven, I have no interest in this. It should be Broncos. The Broncos offense has actually moved the ball all right. It's just the defense that's been terrible. Chicago's been terrible everywhere. It should be the Broncos. I probably should be betting them. I don't know. Maybe I'll play them in a contest or something, but I just can't do it. I don't want to watch the game. I don't want to feel obligated to check in on what's going on. So total pass for me. 2 just very, very, very awful teams right now.
I bet Denver -3 because me.
Like I said, it should be the right side. No, I mean, listen, it should be the right side. Like it should.
Right. Be. Yeah, but I would never bet Denver -3.5. To the casual bettor, I know that sounds crazy, but with how bad the Denver defense has been, I just don't have any interest in betting on a team to win by more than a field goal or I lose my bet. 3, at least I get some push equity. That's fine. And for me, I'm sitting in a situation where I'm 3-0 this year against the spread, betting against the Chicago Bears. And why would I jump off now when I'm getting a spread of 3? So as long as I can bet against the biggest dumpster fire in the NFL, and I'm basically just betting on a team to win, then I'm good with that. And to your point with the Denver offense, it is clearly the best and only functional unit in this game, to be quite honest. 12th in EPA, 11th in pass EPA and success rate, top half by DVOA overall for Russell Wilson and company. And the Chicago offense and defense, I don't need to get into numbers. They're just awful. They're awful in every which way possible for a football team right now. So at least while I'm getting a reasonable number to bet against the Bears, I'm going to keep doing it until they show me that they can actually look like a professional football team.
Yeah, Adam, I think people would be pretty surprised that, I mean, they can't run the ball at all, but Denver's pass offense actually graded out ninth through 3 games by Pro Football Focus. I think people would be like, no, they actually graded out ninth. They've just obviously terrible turnovers for them, struggles in the red zone, et cetera, but they've been able to move the ball between the 20s with all of that. Again, it should be the Broncos. I just don't know if I can get there with an actual bet. Maybe it's a contest play for me. I just I can't get there.
Well, they actually are 14th in rush EPA. They're doing it with each piece of the offense outside of garbage time. At least that's how I have my filters on, from 20% to 80% win probability. And so if you don't like Denver, and I don't like Denver, if you don't like Chicago, and I don't like Chicago, but you know both defenses are trash, then I'm perfectly okay playing over 46. Even though this has moved from 44.5 up to 46, I think that's the way you have to look at this, because the Denver Broncos, okay, game number 1 against the Las Vegas Raiders, the Raiders are bad, right? But then Washington comes in, and after scoring 3 points in the first about 15, 20 minutes of that game, end up with 35. And then you give up 70 in Miami. If Chicago's offense is ever going to get right, this is going to be the week when it gets right. And I think what you have to keep in mind, at least what's keeping me away from betting Denver in this game, is that think back to last year when Chicago was playing this bad and they went to New England in a spot that I thought was the ultimate spot for New England on Monday Night Football. And they somehow, in the 2 weeks they had to prepare for that game, said, hey, you know what we forgot? Justin Fields can run. And at any point, Luke Getsy might just go back to the fact that Justin Fields can run. And if Justin Fields begins to run again, then I think the Chicago offense has the ability to be more functional and potentially be plucky on the spread. But that just would go even farther to wanting to play an over in this game.
Russell Wilson's pass prop is 239.5. I actually have him at 257-ish in there somewhere. That's not a huge edge, but again, if we think this offense can actually look like a real offense against, and move the ball and actually be more efficient, because again, like you said, they hadn't been terrible. If we think they can be more efficient against a terrible, terrible defense, maybe this would be a weird over opportunity on Russell Wilson. Again, 240 might be a little too short for him in this one, but again, you have to hold your butt on that one. Like you're betting Russell Wilson. Yeah.
I just want you guys to brace yourselves. The Bears still have 4 primetime games for the rest of the year. I'm so sorry.
I think we get a Thursday night one. Is it next week?
Next week.
Yeah.
Next week, Chase Young and Montez Sweat are going to wreck Justin Fields next week.
There it is. Can't wait to tune into that one, that's for sure. Las Vegas Raiders and the Los Angeles Chargers. This is now out to 5.5 at most places in favor of the Chargers. 48.5 all the way to 49.5. So be sure and shop around if you're playing the total. Stephen, if we take a look at this one, this is a Chargers team that has actually been very efficient on offense so far, and a Raiders team that has been fairly inefficient on the defensive side of the ball, to say the least. And then offense has been, middle of the pack-ish, but nothing to write home about. The big question here, Jimmy Garoppolo. He's back out at practice. Is he going to be the first skill position guy to be able to get cleared within a week in these new concussion protocols, which we've not seen so far this year? That's kind of the big question. And if he doesn't go, will it be Brian Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell? All of these things are stuff that we are debating here.
If you guys know the answer for this 100%, let me know. Don't you have to get in a full practice, a full participation before the game to clear the protocol at this point? Anybody know that? I'm pretty sure that's the case.
Well, I was listening to a couple of podcasts this week that were kind of digging into this idea a bit and saying that Jimmy Garoppolo does have the ability, like it is within the range of what the concussion protocol allows, that he could play this week.
Okay. Yeah. So as we record right now, Friday afternoon, he is still in the concussion protocol. That's the latest report from about an hour before we recorded. So I guess it's a wait and see. For me, I kind of look at this 2 different ways. If he's not playing, it's clear that it's going to be Brian Hoyer, at least to start the game. And in that case, if I can get to the book.
Not quite yet. It's not clear that it's Brian Hoyer. No. Don't assume that yet.
Okay, is Josh McDaniels
McDaniels was cagey on that.
about that?
McDaniels was very cagey on who would start if it's not Jimmy G. Yeah. So
okay, thank you for
not that I'm
correcting
saying
me
there's a
on
huge difference between Brian Hoyer
well,
and
there might be. We know Brian Hoyer sucks. So at least there's the possibility that maybe Aiden O'Connell's decent, right? And young and athletic. If Brian Hoyer's the starter and I can get less than a touchdown in this game, if I can get 6.5 or better, I'm in on the Chargers, despite how terrible the Chargers defense has been. They are 28th and 29th in EPA and success rate defense. They have only the 19th pressure rate, despite blitzing at a top 10 rate. They also lost Mike Williams for the year, and what's that going to look like first week without him? We don't know. But if Brian Hoyer's the quarterback, whatever, man, I'm in. He shouldn't be on an NFL field anymore at this point. If it's not, and the number is 5.5, I know you guys say that's a dead number, but when you have a coach who's willing to kick a field goal down 8, the back door is always open. So, just cover, baby, as Al Davis always said. But I mean, in all seriousness, the defense is so bad for the Chargers that if it is Jimmy Garoppolo, then I am kind of interested at that point. But it's all very much dependent on the quarterback in my mind in this game.
Adam, I have a Chargers 4 ticket. It opened at 4 on Sunday when I was on air. I just played it based off of, again, if you look at the offense of the Chargers, they've been incredibly, incredibly efficient. I mean, Herbert's second to only Tua in pass EPA this season. I understand the loss of Mike Williams is big, but there's been a lot of missing Mike Williams and missing Keenan Allen over the last couple of years. So Josh Palmer has a ton of experience. Josh Palmer has been in there a lot. And then maybe Quentin Johnston can actually step up and live up to his first round billing here with all of this. Austin Eckler did get in a couple of limited practices. And then you see that Max Crosby downgraded from limited to DNP yesterday. We'll see what that ends up coming through for him today. But, more turmoil as we're coming on air. Chandler Jones arrested early Friday morning in Las Vegas for various things. So, I mean, I don't know. I backing the Chargers and Brandon Staley, who's fake sharp, like it more than a field goal seems like a fool's errand for me, but let me be that fool this week. I'm that fool this week, Adam. What do you think?
You can be that fool. It's not going to be me. And I'm still smarting from that Chargers game in Tennessee a couple of weeks ago where I was in the right on every side of that handicap and somehow ended up losing that game with the Chargers. I told you the Raiders are bad, and I don't really think that there's much of a difference between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brian Hoyer and Aiden O'Connell. And that might sound like sacrilege, guys, but Jimmy Garoppolo has not been an effective addition to this offense this year. He took away the one thing that they did well, which was throwing the ball deep. And now they don't have that ability either. So there's no explosiveness to this offense at all. They scored 10 legitimate points against Denver. 7 of those were gifted to them on the onside kick with the short field. They scored 10 points, 7 of which came on the script at the beginning of the game against the Buffalo Bills. And they scored, oh God, do I have to say 18 points? I guess I have to say 18 points because of the Josh McDaniels field goal on 4th and 4 from the 8 against the Pittsburgh Steelers. I know the Chargers defense is terrible, but I don't believe that there's any quarterback on the roster for the Raiders who's going to be able to make the difference of that. And that sounds like I'm saying lay the points with the Chargers, right? No, I can't. There's too much wrong with this defense right now for me to feel at all confident. The one thing I feel good about is that Keenan Allen is going to eat in this game. You can find it either at plus money over 7.5. You can find it with a little bit more juice you have to pay at 6.5. The Raiders have a grand total of 0 effective cornerbacks. They have a grand total of 0 effective safeties. They have nobody who's going to be able to cover Keenan Allen. I'm not saying he goes for 16 catches like he did last week, but I feel very confident in saying that plus money to get to 8 against this Raiders secondary is going to be within the realm of possibility because Justin Herbert threw the ball 47 times last week against the bad Vikings secondary.
Completed 40 of those, by the way. And this is, I know everything kind of has to go right for this to work out, but if you want to at least earmark this game, guys, it's only one of the few afternoon games. This could be a pretty decent live betting opportunity. If the Raiders were to get the ball first and go down and kick a field goal, and then you could get a live line on the Chargers at 3 or under 3 or something like that, then it could be a decent live betting opportunity. Again, all these things have to happen, right? The Raiders have to get the ball first. They have to go down. They have to score, but could be an opportunity to come in on the Chargers at a better number anyway.
Yeah, and look, what you've seen this year is McDaniels is best on the script, right? Like those first 15 with McDaniels have been the effective plays. It's later that's trouble, so that's perfect in terms of live betting.
All right, guys, Patriots and the Cowboys. It is sitting 6.5 in favor of the Cowboys at home over the Patriots. 43.5 to 44 is your total. Adam, as we take a look at this, the Cowboys go the biggest favorite of the week last week and lose outright to the Cardinals. And then we see the Patriots squeak out a victory 15-10 over the Jets. Patriots have not looked impressive. Cowboys certainly looked really bad last week. What do you make of that? What do you make of these teams? I don't have a bet in the account. I feel like the Cowboys are the side because it's a little bit of an overreaction. I've had this at 7. I had it at a full touchdown. But I'm wondering if maybe I was a little too high on the Cowboys. I was wondering if maybe I was a little too excited about all of these playmakers and getting Zeke out of town so that you had Pollard and maybe you'd run a little bit more efficiently. So I'm going to pump the brakes a little bit. I'm just going to watch this one. What are you going to do with it?
All right. I feel like this is going to become a bit on this podcast with the way I feel about New England. I'm higher on New England than the market. I was higher on New England last week. I came on here last week and told you that my favorite bet of the week was New England laying the points. It got a little bit squirrely there with the way that the weather was and the way they ended up having to play the game. But you said New England hasn't been impressive. I would argue that New England has been very impressive thus far in this young season. Take away the early turnover by Mac Jones. They played Philadelphia to a draw in that game for the most part. They held the Miami Dolphins to 24 and found themselves in the game late. And last week, I get it. It was only a 15-10 final against the Jets, but that game was played in a monsoon. And as soon as they got the lead, it was all running for Bill Belichick. Bill Belichick basically said, I know that Zach Wilson cannot beat me. And the only thing I have to do is not turn the ball over with Mac Jones. And we came on here, Matt and I both said last week with Dallas, we have no idea how good they are. We really had no concept of who they were. And we had a lot of doubt, I think, put into our minds about Arizona. But you say that it's an overreaction. It's really only a move of half a point to a point, depending on where you're looking. I don't know that the market is at a point where it believes really in this New England team yet. I make the game Dallas 4. This is not the most confident that I could ever be in saying take New England and take the points. 7 would feel better than 6.5, of course, because of the fact that Micah Parsons is still Micah Parsons, and he could be the kind of game-wrecking factor that puts Mac Jones in the same situation he was week 1 against the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Like that is well within the band of outcomes that Dallas defense is that much of a disruptor that it causes problems here. But again, that's a Dallas defense that had Trayvon Diggs, and this Dallas defense does not have one of the number 1 corners in the league. So strong lean to New England plus the points here for me.
New England Patriots 26th on the short season in pass block grade. As Stephen, as Adam alluded to, that could come in a problem with Micah Parsons and what he's been able to do so far. But yeah.
Can I push on that with the fact that Trent Brown missed the first couple of weeks, and with Trent Brown back in, Cole Strange back in, they have looked a lot better.
Yeah, I don't think anyone can block Micah Parsons. So I don't really care who's really in there. I think that he is
fair,
almost the key to this game. Weirdly enough, which it should not be the case, but I honestly think how much disruption he can do will be where we're at when this thing's all said and done. At 7, I would be interested maybe in the Patriots. 6.5, 6, not so much. Steven, this feels like a game you've bet. I don't know why. This just feels like a game you've bet.
Perhaps I'm maturing because I have not.
Okay. This is like a gross game where we don't know a whole lot, and you're just like, I gotta bet on this one. Like this is it.
I would say that I don't think I would bet on Dallas ever at these numbers, because Dallas's offense, and in particular their passing game, has not impressed me at this point. And it wasn't just the Arizona game. They have yet to have a game in terms of yards per play that would have been above average for the overall season average a year ago. And if you go to the other side, Micah Parsons, pass rush, I get that. They're also dead last in rushing defense success rate. So down to down, they are not stopping the run better than anybody in the NFL. They are horrible. You don't think Bill Belichick's going to see that and try and turn this into a rock fight and keep it close with Ramondre Stevenson and now, to Adam's point, a healthy offensive line? Overall, now a top 10 offensive line in adjusted sack rate if you're looking at the pass blocking as well here. So I at least see some matchups where New England can muck this up a little bit and keep it close like they have some of the other opponents they've had. I'm also not going to bet New England because I feel like I need the full 7 to feel confident about it. Just my opinion. So I'm going to kind of sit back and watch here. And, Dallas, I agree with you. They are clearly the number 3 team in the NFC to me at this point, behind Philadelphia and San Francisco. And I need to see something from their passing offense, because that's also another issue with them in this game, because Christian Gonzalez, the outstanding rookie corner for New England, can just cover CeeDee Lamb theoretically here. And then what have we seen from the other Dallas pass catchers, Adam?
Well, Steven, I'm going to put this question back to you, and I'll put it back to both of you guys. And again, you guys know I've been soft on Detroit from the beginning of the season to here. But right now, what would you guys make Detroit-Dallas on a neutral?
After what we saw on Thursday Night Football?
Probably less than a field goal.
Yeah, I don't think I'd make Dallas 3 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, my power ratings put that at Dallas 2.5 on a neutral. So all I'm trying to say is, as a number 3, yes, I think they're number 3. But I don't know that they're number 3 with a bullet here at the moment
soft
after
3.
What we saw last week. Yeah.
Yep, soft 3 for sure.
Yeah.
With that one, yeah, I'm kind of confused by with all of that. And again, the market agrees with you guys. It was at 7, it was at 6.5. Now 6s are starting to show out there as well. So the market agrees with you guys that the Patriots should be the side here in this one. Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers. There's no handicap to this game. I don't care what you saw last week by the Cardinals. They're going to get destroyed. They're going to get bludgeoned in this game. The 49ers are 14-point home favorites. It is 43.5 to 44 is your total. The 49ers can name their score. It is a name your score game, Adam. I don't care what anybody says. There are going to be people out there who take this at 14 on Sunday, and I'm going to get a 13, and I'm going to play the 49ers. I don't have anything in my account right now, but you get me off the 2 touchdowns, and they're going to take it, and then I'm going to take the 13 with the 49ers, and then when we look up, and this game is 31 to 6 or whatever it's going to be, 31 to 9, then I will just say, see, this sometimes we don't have to overthink these things.
All right, so if you're reacting to Arizona's win against Dallas last week, listen to what we just said. We're starting to wonder whether there's some softness in Dallas there, and we said that for the first 2 weeks, we don't know what either of those wins against the Giants or Jets really mean, what sort of a hill of beans they amount to in the end. So that would mean that you would look at Arizona's first 3 weeks against Washington, against the Giants, and against Dallas and say they really haven't played a good team yet. And the one thing we all agree on in this podcast is that San Francisco is an elite team. So I don't want to have to bet on it. I don't want anything to do with it. If you made me pick a side, I would say lay it with San Francisco.
Steven, what say you?
Yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't need to get into the numbers here. It's a really good team against, I don't think they're the worst team like we all thought coming into the year, but I still think they're bottom 5. We'll at least give them a little bit of credit on that. They certainly look punchy and well coached. But if you do a little exercise here, Dallas was minus 13 at Arizona, and now San Francisco is only minus 14 at home versus Arizona with extra rest coming off Thursday Night Football. That doesn't really make sense to me. Both of these teams played the Giants. Closing lines implied that the Giants were 7 points better than Arizona on neutral. San Francisco 8.5 points better than the Giants on a neutral. So theoretically, that's 15.5 points better than Arizona on neutral for San Francisco. And the game's in San Francisco, and we're staring at 14. So don't often make the case for a double-digit 2-touchdown favorite to be valuable. But, Matt, as I sit here, one of the books is down to 13.5 minus 115. So I think you might get your wish here. And I'd put a small bet on Niners minus 14. Yeah. And if it goes the direction we think, I might put a little bit more on it.
Yeah, no, the 14s are going to go away because people are going to wake up on Sunday morning and they're going to go, 14 points is too much. I don't care. Like that's just 14 points is too much. I don't care. I don't think in this case that it is. By the way, we do a whole separate Survivor podcast and whatever, but if you're still in Survivor, one, good on you. Because 75% of everybody is gone. But if you're still in, if the pool is small at this point, just play the 49ers. Don't get cute. Like this is the slam dunk of the week. Play them, move on. Don't play any of these other teams, and you can deal with that later. If you're in one of the ones that still has thousands of people, yes, there's a discussion to be had, but don't get cute with the 49ers this week. Kansas City Chiefs and the New York Jets. This is 8.5 or 9. We can still get a teaser leg in at some of the books out there on the Chiefs. The Jets have looked very bad, and they continue to get told that their quarterback is going to be the quarterback, and that poor guy keeps getting rolled out week after week. And I almost am starting to feel sorry for Zach Wilson. The reports are coming out that he bought the whole team ice cream yesterday because that's not like me trying to be funny. Literally,
that's real.
That's real. He bought he bought the whole team ice cream yesterday, basically because I know you all hate me, so here's ice cream, to try to get make you feel better about me. 41.5 is the total. Steven, again, just Chiefs are going to win. It's just one of those things of do you feel comfortable laying the big number? What do you honestly think that the backdoor type situation could be in a game like this? What's the over under and how many times we're going to see Taylor Swift throughout the course of the game? I mean, maybe that's what we should be really handicapping here more is, the Taylor Swift factor in all this thing.
I want credit that I was the first to start using song lyrics in copy. All right. I want credit for that, Adam.
You weren't even close to the first.
Oh, come on. I was closer to the first than all these hacks on social media. That's for damn sure.
Hey. We don't need any bad blood here amongst this.
I'm quitting.
Can one of you explain to me why Jets money is coming in to move this from 9.5 to 8.5? I get low total. Generally, that's a lot of points for a low total, but also Zach Wilson is the worst quarterback on the planet facing a really good defense, and the team hates him, and they've quit on him, and they're yelling on the sidelines, and everybody's upset, and the coach has done a complete 180 going from throwing him under the bus last year to now defending him at the podium, which everybody sees through. Teaser leg of the century, gentlemen. And very easy partner with the Eagles this week.
I just went and looked. There's no weather concerns or anything like that to where maybe it could muck the game up or something. So
teaser leg of the century. Nothing's ever a guarantee, but tell me how the Chiefs don't win by 3.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, Adam, make the case, Adam, for playing against an Eagles Chiefs teaser this week. What's the case against that?
The case against an Eagles Chiefs teaser is that we really have not seen Philadelphia look totally itself quite yet. And again, I'm not trying to tell you that this is what you shouldn't do, right?
Sure.
I'm just telling you this is the case. And on the other side of this, I don't know who the Jets defense is, but I can tell you that Kansas City's offense against non-Chicago Bears teams has been kind of meh thus far. Now, one of those weeks had no Travis Kelce. We understand that. But the 17 against Jacksonville probably could have been 24 if they had really gone down at the end of the game. But let me talk to you about the Jets defense, because we're all taking for granted that the Jets defense is elite. So they are 5th by Pro Football Focus grade. They are 17th by DVOA. They are 29th by non-garbage time EPA per play. Wow. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know. They're elite against the run, and by EPA per play numbers, they're really bad against the pass thus far. And, I don't need to tell you who's on the other side of the field for the Kansas City Chiefs. So I could make you the case that Kansas City's offense has not really hummed outside of the Bears. I could make you the case that Philadelphia is not playing its best ball. But when Sunday gets here, if you have a Chiefs-Eagles teaser in your account, you should feel pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, Steven, I actually am kind of the guy who thinks the Chiefs offense is going to look better and better and better each week, right? Because it is...
What would make you think that?
You would assume that Kelsey's going to be getting more healthy. You would assume that Mahomes has started to figure out who he actually likes and can trust and whatever. So Is it Rashee Rice, who, by the way, got a bunch of targets? I mean, I think he's starting to figure out things as well with all of this. The scary part about this is the best offensive line that he's had since he's been there. And so now he has all the time in the world. He's not having to make Houdini plays left and right because he actually has time to do whatever he wants to, which is also a scary thing in all this. I just don't know where the defense is good. Like, I just don't know where the Jets score enough. Could the Chiefs cover 8.5 or 9 by only scoring 17 points in this game? And I think the answer is yes. Like, I honestly think that the answer is yes. So I just don't know the case, I guess, for the Jets on the other side, other than, like you said, just the traditional fundamental thinking, which is 9 points, 41.5. You take the 9 points in a 41.5.
And Zach Wilson's holding the ball longer than any quarterback in the league. Like,
well, if you play it out the way that you just said, Matt, right? Then the Jets team total, which is still abysmally low, is 15.5, right? Do you believe the Jets are getting to 15.5 points against a good defense? So if you're feeling like you have to have an alternate way into this, then just bet straight against Zach Wilson by taking under 15.5.
That's true. That's a very good angle. That's a very good angle.
And here's the other thing, too. They've already said that Trevor Siemian's going to be inactive this week. So there's not even like some wild card at quarterback unless you think Tim Boyle's a thing, which we don't.
Yes, we're not getting like the hero comes in the third quarter and puts on the cape and all of the things like that. Like, that's not what we're going to be getting in this one. Unfortunately, that is our Sunday night football game, and we're going to have to endure, what I consider to be a pretty sloppy, kind of ugly-ish win by the Chiefs. I don't think the Jets can do anything there. That being said, we will close out the podcast by saying, yes, Taylor Swift is good for football, and Taylor Swift is good for the NFL, and anything that puts more eyeballs on a league that I make money from is good for me. And so I'll be selfish and I don't care. Put out more Taylor Swift videos and tweets and show her 37 times a game. I don't care. It's better for me, and anything that's better for me, I like. Adam, do you have an opinion that's contrary to what I just said?
No, I'm just not going to let you close the podcast on that because I don't get to talk to everybody about Monday Night Football. Seattle is going to wreck the New York Giants. And I know that is an unpopular opinion, and that is an anti-market opinion, but let me tell you something here right now. The Giants' interior offensive line is an absolute train wreck. Seattle had 36 pressures against Carolina last week. Daniel Jones is going to have just as much time as he has had in the first few weeks, which is to say he is going to snap the ball and have his knee on the ground half a second later. So I don't have to believe much in Seattle to tell you that. The Seattle Seahawks are starting to look a little bit more like the team we thought they were going to look like at the beginning of the season, and there's way too much respect baked into the market for what we saw last year out of the New York Giants, which even I, as a Giants fan, admitted to everyone they had a lot of fluky things go their way. They're having none of those things go their way, and don't be fooled by the fact that Andrew Thomas is coming back, because Andrew Thomas plays left tackle, and all the pressure has come up the middle. 20 of the pressures for Seattle last week were up the middle, where everything has gone wrong for the Giants thus far.
And just to add to that, Andrew Thomas DNP today out there. So
even better. I guess I don't have anything to do on Monday night now.
Andrew Thomas DNP today at practice. So as we know, a Friday downgrade typically pretty bad. Typically pretty bad when it comes to all of that. Steven. Listen, I know you're a Swiftie. I know you got people can't see the full whatever you because the posters you're facing all the posters. They're not behind you. I know, like you're facing all the posters
above my bed over here. That's why listen, I can't see them.
Listen, this is good for all of us. Wife. We should be embracing this. This is good for all of us. We should be embracing this. I know everyone wants to make snarky comments about all this stuff. Listen, more eyeballs, more fans, more people involved. This is good for everybody. I don't know why people are losing their minds about this.
Don't blame me, Adam. I was ready to talk about Monday Night Football, so there's nothing wrong with it.
I've said everything I need to say. I can let Matt once again celebrate things that are good for him, and we can all have a lovely Sunday and a terrible Monday.
Listen, whether you like it or not, you better just ask yourself: you ready for it?
There you go. I was waiting for you to work something in there, and I'm glad you did. 1.5 right now in favor of the Seahawks. If you did want to go ahead and get that, Adam says the Giants are going to get wrecked in this game. So definitely go do that. Guys, everything we do is absolutely free. So your support can be just by hitting the subscribe button on this thing. If you're listening to us on the audio side, also go in, subscribe, give us a little thumbs up and a 5-star review and all of that stuff, and a little comment even if we've helped you make even $1 this NFL season. We do appreciate all of those reviews. It does help us climb the charts, and more people can find this very podcast as well. So do appreciate that from you guys. Upper right-hand corner at TheLines.com is the Discord. Steven's mentioned it a few different times on this podcast. There is commentary going on all day long and certainly leading right up to kickoff. So anything you don't get from us here, you can get over there. That also absolutely free. For Steven, for Adam, I'm Matt. Good luck on all your week 4 games.